What rule exists because of you? At my work, we have a written rule that we cannot do any voice impressions over the drive-through headsets. Specifically, Skeletor and Herbert the Pervert. Dude at my unit bell greeted me as Optimus Prime. He didn't do an impression or anything. Just introduced himself by name. I was pretty tickled. The town I live in has a free bus that runs late at night through all the college neighborhoods and by all the dorms to discourage all the drunk college kids from driving home from downtown. One day me and my wasted buddy were riding home when he discovered he had a bunch of bottle rockets in his coat pocket from a night earlier in the week. So logically we handed them out to everyone on the bus with the provision that they not set them off on the bus. This turned into a string of fireworks going off all over town right behind the bus for the whole ride. There are now big signs on all the buses that say no fireworks. I put a pencil in the microwave. Bang. No more elementary school microwaves. No more than 30 cases of beer per vehicle. Instituted after I showed up at the beer distributors to buy their overstock beer with a step van and bought all their overstock beer. Haha. Why though? I mean they aren't losing profit. I could understand if you were going to resell the beer though. Because there would typically be about a half dozen people camping out waiting for the beer sales to start. My friends and I walked out with close to 200 cases of beer and nobody else got any. Not sure this count, but when I worked at Sears the dress code required men wear a tie. I wore same bollard tie every day. 6 months later Sears made new dress code rule and gave memo to 100 employees. Bollard ties only allowed with coordinating western outfit. Next day I wore my boots and spurs with my bollard tie. One time I got airdrop banned from my school because I renamed my phone to Hot Single Goats in Your Area and airdropped photoshopped pictures of goats in bikinis so much that people couldn't use their school devices. Nobody knows it was me and I won't tell anyone at my school. Edit. Here's a picture. That reminds me. During a class at university the professor's presentation was interrupted by a pop-up stating Hot 6 GOM 69 wants to connect with you. Someone had changed their device name to that and tried to connect to his Wi-Fi or something. IDK. No clue about MacBooks. The prof hit cancel and said maybe we should connect after the class. I worked at a big chain store in college. We used to get these displays in for speakers and home theater systems, and usually they had a sales pitch and demo loaded on a flash drive that would play when you pressed a button on the display. And on a particularly slow Sunday morning, I took 3 or 4 of these flash drives and plugged them into a laptop. Replaced all the audio files with Gangnam Style and set the function to auto run at 3 AM. Before we closed shop, I cranked all the displays up to max volume and inserted the flash drives. It took the night crew 3 nights to finally figure out how to stop the entire electronics section from playing that song at 3 AM. And so after that, management retained all flash drives that came in and had customers plug in their phone to test out systems. I caused an addition to my kids' private school handbook, which should have already been in it. My daughter came home and told me one of her classmates had confided in her that they were being abused. Being a healthcare provider, I'm required by law to report it to the local social services. I also informed the teacher just as a professional courtesy, as she would likely be questioned too. The brand new to the school pastor had a fit and told me it wasn't my place, that they would investigate it without the state being involved. I nicely told him to duck off. He got some gory details of CPR I did on a victim of child abuse and informed him teachers are also mandated reporters. The next year they added an action plan on how they handle suspected child abuse to the school handbook. We have not spoke more than 3 words to each other since this incident. More important, the child in question is alive and well, not being abused anymore. There's a cruise ship somewhere with a handwritten sign that says the floor is lava is strictly prohibited on the carousel thanks to me. No snowball fights on campus. My twin brother and I went to the same community college before university. I saw him sitting on a bench in the courtyard one day and threw a snowball at him. This started a chain reaction of a 50+ person snowball fight. It was pretty crazy. Well, An undercover police officer was in the courtyard walking by and decided he should detain me, then threatened to get me kicked out of school. The dean asked that it not happen again, but wasn't nearly so eager to expel a student for throwing snow at his brother. No tossing throwing receipt paper. It must be passed hand to hand. I worked at Lowe's in outside lawn and garden during the summer. We were Walmart on Black Friday busy. My register runs out of tape, and my supervisor tosses me a new roll. I fail to catch. It hits my in the face. I don't feel hurt. Try to continue working. Get escorted to the bathroom by manager. My upper lip is almost detached from my face. There is blood everywhere. I am sent to the ER and have to have it stitched back up. I was honestly more worried the supervisor was going to get in trouble than I was about the injury. I'm extremely accident prone. Edit, only surviving photo. Probably a weekish or so after the fact. Imgur.com. When I was in HS, I would go to band camp every year about 2 weeks before school started. My junior year I brought a lot of food. It was a combination of disliking that camp's cafeteria and being on the high school version of a health craze. Along with the food I brought saran wrap. I don't remember the exact logic. I wanted to wrap something edible though. Well, every morning we were supposed to clean the cabin between revival and breakfast. One kid a year behind me, we'll call him Johnny, didn't want to clean and went back to bed instead. Johnny woke up a few minutes later completely immobilized by his saran wrap cocoon. Thus was born the contraband list. The list is about a page now and my family is responsible for about half of it. Now every year, parents of freshmen, especially girls, raise their eyebrows at the words plastic or saran wrap near the top of the list. In my elementary school, there was a rule that you could no longer wear heelys to school. I would heely down to lunch and be first in line. Always. And some bitch has told the teacher I ran into her while heely-eyeing. Bitch. When I was in college, I had this one professor who was all but universally loathed. Tended to be very condescending to students. Was unhelpful. Went on convoluted tangents that didn't explain the material. And just generally had no capacity for teaching. Story went that one time. He'd been assigned to teach an intro level course. Not only did most of the students drop it, a third of them dropped out of college altogether. Anyway, it came time for evaluations. And I wrote a lengthy and rather scathing screed 4 pages upon pages. I don't remember most of what I said, but I do recall writing to the effect that a typical bird bath would have made for a more effective instructor. Next semester, the evaluation forms all suddenly contained a new line specifying that our critiques had to be civil. New to the ship, I had to do a loft maintenance on my radar. There were several PMS orders that had very specific instructions that needed to be followed to the letter. Take this screw out. Remove this box. Put box back and use screw from step 1 to secure it. I noticed that I had 2 jobs on the radar that asked for 2 types of grease to be used in the same location. I pointed this out and after a thorough investigation it was discovered that the entire Navy was using the wrong types of grease and or mixing 2 types. I think one was jet grade grease and the other was a low grade grease. I started the trend of putting notes in my calculator, T89, for exams. This was before cell phones became popular. In my last semester, I told some of my peers and they all started doing it. Someone snitched. The whole department went crazy. They put a rule in to now have the students have to do the written portion first, then get their calculator to do the other part. Lol. My school just made us clear the calculator memory before exams. In high school, I was on the lighting crew for the spring musical and was the lead spotlight. The spotlights for the show were on scaffolds relatively high above the gym floor. Before the matinee, the wooden bleachers for the gym had been pulled out and the scaffold was in between them. I was on top of the scaffold doing my pre-show check on the spotlight when the pre-show meeting was called for cast and crew. As I climbed down the scaffold, I lost my grip and fell 15 feet onto the wooden bleachers. I luckily landed in between two sets of bleacher seats and not on any of the hard edges of the bleachers. I got knocked out cold. Got sent to the hospital and subsequently was diagnosed with a bruised left femur. Because of the accident. Now no student is allowed on scaffolds, if they are needed, without adult supervision, that is, teacher, parent, etc., and spotlights for all shows from then on were placed on the floor. I had a possible concussion at the regional championships and kept playing. Turned out it was a major concussion. The league now has a much more cautious concussion protocol. No drag racing on airport runways. Wasn't formally written before. Well, I got lightsabers banned from the local movie theater after watching The Force Awakens. I'll be watching Rogue One at a different movie theater now. I got costumes banned at my school for wearing a stormtrooper costume the week 7 came out. High school Spanish project had an extra category added to the rubric because of my group. We had to plan a vacation to an assigned Spanish speaking country. My group was assigned to go to Spain from the US. We thought the best way to get to Spain was via Korean Airlines with a layover in Seoul. Teacher got mad. Said flights had to be as efficient as possible. Still not sure why that rule was added. Whenever we had an indoor recess it was the thing. As the kids are saw nowadays. To play UGR. There was this one kid in my class who had this massive deck of 200 plus cards that was all strapped together with rubber bands. He always bragged that he had all of these rare and powerful cards. Despite this he never won a duel. His deck was so massive there was no real flow or strategy to it. One day he got so tired of losing that he sneaked away during lunch. Went back to the classroom. Searched through everyone's things. And bit all the cards he found in half. The only reason we found out it was him is because he swallowed a bunch of cards. And when he went to the nurse and started puking them up it became pretty obvious what happened. And that's how UGR cards were banned from school when I was in the 3rd grade. Edit, grammar. At my job I got suspended for poking an employee. There is now a rule on general touching. No hugs, high fives, handshakes, and especially no poking. Your job sounds just really ducking boring. I mean no celebratory high fives? How do you greet people if you can't hug or shake their hand? Do a ducking Vulcan salute and say hello? Middle school, eating any part of an animal that we're supposed to be dissecting results in an automatic 1-week suspension. Why the? Wait. I'd rather not know why. I had been dead. It was a matter of honor. Blue Springs. FL there's a sign on one of the docks telling you not to jump in there. That's because I did jump in there and left a trail of blood on the boardwalk from the 4-inch gash in my foot. I work at a place where you're allowed to drink a couple beers at your desk on Fridays, or whenever. Apparently 40s look bad to clients. I worked at a place like that too. Our department of 20-somethings abused the shit out of it. A few beers at 4ish on Friday turned into getting sloshed at lunch and champagne bottles everywhere. Company-wide email goes out reminding us it's Beer Friday and it starts at 4. 2 belayers. Always. At this gym I used to frequent. I had a single belayer and he dropped the rope and I fell 40 feet and broke my back. So there has to be 2 people belaying someone climbing at all times? That seems a bit excessive. Couldn't they have implemented a test system where belayers had to show that they could belay safely before being allowed in? I'm not saying what happened to you wasn't terrible. But it can be difficult to get 3 people together to go climbing sometimes. No swimming in the pool if you currently have or had diarrhea within the last 30 days. This sign isn't so people don't cheat in the pool. It's so they don't cause an outbreak of C. diff or another contagion. No roughhousing or you will be asked to leave. This is a sign posted at a bar I frequent due to some of us idiots deciding slapboxing inside was a good idea. It was a few years ago but the sign still exists. I have a friend who goes to a college in PA. He told me that one winter, one of the students wanted to build an igloo and sleep outside. So he built that igloo. Whipped out a sleeping bag. Got all cozy inside. and fell asleep. Now, this is a stupid idea for a number of reasons. But apparently, someone was dumb enough to think that he had passed out and was dying. They called campus security and an ambulance to take him away. But as everyone came to find out, he was just asleep. However, for giving the college such a scare, they banned the activity specifically. A rule literally exists that says something along the lines of no sleeping in igloos. Also, the same guy had a rule made about him that said no performing parkour on the campus buildings. That one explains itself.